you doing today?
Good, it's a nice day in Denver.
Yay! Absolutely. Absolutely. So you have nearly 400 entries on IMDb, okay? That means that you are a busy guy.
Was and am again.
That's right.
Now I'm dubbing a lot of stuff for Netflix, dubbing a lot of foreign films for Netflix. And if the voices are still in, I don't know if they're in, but I did some voices for Toy Story 5.
What? Okay, see, you are the coolest, and I knew you were the coolest, but now you're even cooler than I understood. When it comes to getting into performance and acting, how did the bug bite you? When were you first introduced to this as an opportunity?
You know, I was 5 years old, living in Brooklyn, and I would go down to the local store and sing. I don't sing now, but as a kid, you think you do anything, you think you're great. And I'd go down and I'd sing, and they'd throw pennies at me. And I'd come home with pennies. I said, where'd you get that money? 50 pennies or 100 pennies a buck. That's a lot of money in the 30s.
Absolutely.
And I've always wanted to be an actor. And people, family would say, I think my mom would say, everybody wants to go with me. The rest of the family go, an actor? You're going to be an actor? That's not an easy job. And I'm like, well, I'm going to do that as a kid. And I said, what if you don't do that? And I said, then I'll die. And right up until the time I got my first job, people would say I was in my 30s when I got my first year job. And up until that time, I did all kinds of jobs. I was an usher at Grauman's Chinese Theater. I worked at a newspaper where I cleaned the toilets, and I washed dishes, and I worked as a car hop. I did it all. Yeah.
How much of that goes into your experience that you pull into for acting?
Oh yeah. When you don't have to start at that level.
Right.
You can be the son of or the daughter of a famous person, and they can get you in. I don't know if it's as rewarding. It may be. I don't know. I haven't been there, but I don't know if it's as rewarding as working your way through it. Because people always think, oh well, you know somebody in your life. I said, no, I didn't know anybody. Somebody discovered me eventually, which is nice. Somebody finally said, yeah, what about him? Nothing good.
When you got that first role, how many of those family members did you contact to make sure that they knew that you were doing it?
I took them all out of the will. But because I was under contract for Universal Studios, which was really great. One for guy just called up a buddy and said, this kid's really good, and they put me under contract. But I was the actor. Everybody else at Universal, most of the people in the contract were so beautiful. Beautiful women, handsome guys. And I was always the bad guy, or the cop, or the guy who raped somebody. I mean, I was always the bad, but I worked, right? I continually worked, and that was great. Doing that stuff was great. And using what experience I had other than raping people.
I'm glad that clarified. He's joking. You use that. And so I studied to be an actor. People always ask me, how do you get there? I don't know anybody gets there overnight. Maybe they do, but you have to study because that gives you the longevity. I mean, is anybody here want to do voiceovers? One person. Oh my God, it's narrowing down. Go to Michael Bell Voice class, or Michael Bell Voice animation class on YouTube. It's free, and I teach you to develop characters for about an hour and a half. And I have 5 young people that I'm teaching who are actors, and I've never done voices because it's a different world. Because the microphone is in the ear. Why don't you try something? It's really interesting. Do you all know what you sound like? I think you do, but you don't. You know what you sound like? Here's how I talk when I start teaching in class. Because the microphone is in the ear, you put your hands behind your ears, and you say your name, and you'll hear what you sound like. Because your voice goes here and goes here.
and you can hear your lows, and you can hear this, and you can hear your highs, and you can hear it even higher, and you can hear it even lower. But you can only do it if you do this, and you kind of know what you think. Really interesting.
That's awesome. Make some noise for that, y'all. There wasn't a lot of people that raised their hand about being actors, but when I see y'all later on just doing this in the hallway,
Don't do that if you get stopped by a cop. Hello, officer.
Now, with all the characters that you've played, I think that it might be really unfair to ask you if you have a favorite character.
That's like asking if I have a favorite child. I guess I do. Wishful Wings at Work, which is a Christmas special of Spielberg. I play Opus. It's a wonderful character, which was a real gift. And the funny thing about it was, everybody in Hollywood was trying out for it. All the voice actors went out there, on-camera voice actors, etc. And Spielberg was producing it for Berkeley Breathitt, who does series. And so I got the word that the only two people they weren't interested in seeing was Frank Welker and Michael Bell, because they've done too much.
Wow.
So they had some other young guy come in and he did it. They didn't like it when he was halfway through. They changed their mind, and they called Frank Welker. So Frank did it, and then they played it for Spielberg's son, who was a young kid at the time, and he said, I don't like that voice. So they said, what are we going to do? So they said, we'll call Michael Bell. So I came in, and I got it, but I had to do it to Frank's meter. So I had to dub it to Frank's meter, literally, to place it in to Frank's meter. It was really interesting, because they finished it, pretty much finished it. And it worked out well. It was really fun. It was really fun. And of course, Chucky's dad on Rugrats.
So, with such a robust library of work under you, when have you ever been recognized for your voice out in the wild?
When I make an obscene phone call, it's very You just pick up the phone and go, hang on, Mike, let me get a cigarette. I don't actually.
Really?
No, I don't. Occasionally, somebody will say, I think I heard your voice. Do you do voices or something? It's rare. People don't identify to that degree for some reason, which is fine with me.
Sure. Anonymity is a useful tool sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. I think one of the things that we were kind of talking about before the panel started was how well a panel like this would go with a bowl of cereal. Okay, because there's so much Saturday morning cartoonishness that it's like just right for this. I have to ask on a personal level, what would be your perfect Saturday morning cereal?
Well, I've done the voices for cereals.
Okay, let's go.
I've done voices for cereals, and the big one for food. I've done a lot of food commercials, tons of food commercials, and for Gerber's baby food, and during a couple of years of Gerber's baby, Gerber's the baby, whatever. I looked at what was on the ingredients. I said, I'm feeding my kid this. Forget that. I'm going to get a grinder. She's sitting at the table to grind up our food. She'll eat what we eat. Not even Gerber, whatever, baby food. Until they came out with the organic stuff. Until that way. But I remember doing, I don't know, most of you are very young. I don't know if you remember a commercial for Parquet, and I would go, and I remember doing that and having to do quite a few, with a lot of different characters. And I remember there were two little kids that they were sitting at the breakfast table, and they're making breakfast for mom, special breakfast for mom. And when the lid goes open, it goes, better. And they start to laugh. They have to laugh. And then they do something else and it goes, better. And they start to laugh, and they go, parquet. And then they laugh, and well, after the first take, the kids already knew what was happening, and they don't have the ability to fake a really good laugh.
Right.
So after the first experience and surprise, The second time I went, they went, and the director said, oh, we'll be in trouble, we're gonna hold their shoe. These are twins. So I said, okay, let me get under the table. I'm gonna do something. I got under the table, because don't forget, they would put the voice in later. So I got under the table, and these little patent leather feet are kicking like this. And they start the commercial, and they go, Mom's gonna wake up, let's make breakfast for her. I know that's my cue. And I went, Kakapopo. Well, that's all you have to say to kids. 3 times. They roared. Every time I did it, they got hysterical. We did a second take, I went, Piki Kaka. They did a third take, I went, Doodoo Piki Kaka. That's all you have to do is talk about that. And they were on the floor screaming. We took a break. After the break, it was really great. The director came over and he said, okay, the mother of the little girls is over there, way down at the studio, the sound stage, way down, and she's standing like this. And he said, she doesn't like the language you're using. I said, Pee-pee, caca, doo-doo, what is that? And she doesn't like it. I said, okay. How about if I say, and he said, wait, you want me to tell her? I said, so she's like this. He goes, oh, I want you to know, oh. He leans in, he says, she went, she looked at me and I went, she walked off, never heard from her again. So there's one of my favorite commercials.
That's amazing. Make some noise for that, young man. How many of you remember the Parquet commercial? Like, that was classic, absolute classic. I think one of the other things that should be celebrated is the evolution and advancement of technology when it comes to doing ADR and voice work. From your earliest performance, can you tell us what has been the biggest change for how you actually have to work today?
Well, for most of us, actors love to work together because you play off of each other. Even when there's strict dialogue, you still play, you throw an and an attitude. So, an example, when I did Rugrats, and they said, we want you to play Chucky's dad. I was playing the grandpa, and I was doing Reptar, and I was doing the dog, Spike, I was Angelica's dad, Drew, but this was a different character. And I said, and I didn't know what she sounded like, because it was all brand new. So I said, well, what does she sound? So Chris Cabin, the rest of us was playing little Chucky, and I heard her go, oh no, what am I going to do now? We're going out of trouble. Oh, okay, kid. I went, why don't I do that and have that amazing? So she got my adenoidal problem. He got my adenoidal problem. So I ended up doing that. And we worked together. So when Chris did something or any of the other characters did something, I could react as any of my characters. Then it got to a point where we started to work alone. When we were doing Transformers, we all worked together. There were about, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 of us in this little tiny room, and Robbie Bird, the director, and it was hot and sweaty, and at one point I think I grew a mushroom on my chest. Oh. We're talking, it was hot, and sharing the mic, and we popped in and said, okay, what are we doing? I said, okay, get over here, Scarlett! Back. So, but later on, when it took off, and the series took off, and everybody got real busy, we were doing it by ourselves. And you don't, and I would have to do 3 lines in a row. So if let's say the script was at one point you say, well, what do you want me to do? You go, well, what do you want me to do? Take 2. Well, what do you want me to do? Take 3. What do you want me to do? And they would take that choice. And it sometimes didn't match the character that said something before you, that if it's that response. It might have been a different, but you didn't hear it, the person before you did.
So it's a mix and match. And I don't trust anybody else to do that. I don't care who it is out there. I don't trust them to mix and match and do a jigsaw. Because I think audiences are smart. I really do. I think innately, you may not be actors, you go, that's an odd response to that point of view from somebody that's saying something, somebody getting angry. Why didn't that character get angrier? Should have. Line demanded it, but they didn't choose it. So that's the difference. That's today.
Of course, of course. I think that's the voice acting equivalent of a lot of shows featuring green screen performances, where you're having to act against something that's not there, and you're pulling from nothing.
Listen, you're fans. I'm a fan. Okay? I went over to Bryce Dallas yesterday, and I gushed. Embarrassing me. I love it. I walked over to him, we were in the green room, and I said, I just have to tell you, my daughter was a redhead and adores, my daughter's an actress as well, Ashley Bell, and I said, she adores you, you are so gorgeous, it's so good, and I had to tell you, she said, oh my God, thank you, you have a redheaded daughter, and I said, yeah, she said, I have 2 kids and they're both brunettes. She says, but I lucked out, one of them is dating a redhead, so I'm almost there. So, I'm a fan. I'm a fan, so I understand the whole fan base. I understand that. I was at a convention, and the guy across the way had a big poster of Bambi, and it looked real. It didn't look like a fake. It didn't look like a repro. So I walked across the way. This older dude, and I say older dude like I'm 12. Yeah. And I walked over and I said, where'd you get that poster? I said, is that real? He said, yeah, this is real. I said, that's an original? And he said, yeah. I said, where'd you get that? And I was ready to buy it off of him. And he said, well, Walt gave it to me. Oh. Now Walt's been dead, unless he's come back. It's cryogenically. They say in Hollywood, is he still dead? I said, Walt Disney? And he said, yeah. I said, why? He said, well, I was the voice of Andy. Okay. I should have worn the pants. I beat my pants. I gushed. I was fanboy. I said, oh my God, oh my. Can we do a selfie? Do I have to pay you? Can we do a selfie? He said, sure. And he's so great. He's so cool. He said, and we do one together because you're the voice of the Smurfs, and it's one of my favorites. We did a whole swap thing, and he said, wonderful. But that's where that comes from. Something that we identify with. Don't forget, my Bambi. How many fans here from Transformers? Okay, okay. When Prowl died, okay, I get responses because I hadn't seen the movie. All I did was die. I never saw myself die. Years later, until 30 years later, I saw the movie. And they went, wait, what? And some kids cried, some kids said, you didn't kill Prowl. And the same thing, I guess, with not Megatron.
With Optimus.
Optimus as well. But they said, when Prowl died, they didn't kill him, did they? The lights went out and smoke came out of my nose or something, and the lights. I said, that was my Bambi moment. Because when Bambi, you hear the shot in the back, you hear, and in the back, when the stag comes out, he says, Bambi. And he says, Mother? Where's Mother? And he says, Faylene is not coming back. And it didn't register with the kids for about a second or two, and the theater is packed with moms and kids, and suddenly you heard, everybody in the audience was, and all the moms were rushing out with their kids and crying. That was your Bambi moment.
That's so true. That's so true. How many are still traumatized to this day? Yes. Listen,
They have an
apology tour.
apology tour. There's an apology tour. Anything to make money, right?
I mean, listen.
40 years of trauma, yeah.
What I think is most interesting too is from a narrative standpoint. Okay, sure, there's a storytelling piece there, but it was actually more commercial based for it happening to us because they had a new volume of toys that were coming out, and that was why they killed Optimus. You're like, you killed money? That's so violent. But to that end, obviously the 80s was such a phenomenal time for cartoons and voice work. What was your favorite 80s cartoon that you got to work on?
Wow.
the 80s cartoon. I'm trying to remember who I was in the 80s.
So you got some G.I. Joe. You got Transformers, right?
Humanoids.
Yes. I would count the Smurfs too. Like absolutely.
Smurfs.
Yeah.
Smurfs were fun. Smurfs were great because I worked with some marvelous talent. When the babies came in, the all new guys, it was really great fun. I think the Smurfs, I remember this most visibly because we had to sing. We started out every morning. We had to re-record every time. We'd go, la, 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 la. I had an evening when I was dating my wife, trying to impress her, and I got nervous and I said, would you like something to eat? And she said, I'd never eat on a first date. I said, oh, okay. Well, there's some banana bread I got as a gift, so I'm going to have some. Do you mind? She said, no, okay. She's watching a movie, watching in my den. And I got banana bread and I cut it and I toasted it and I buttered it and I came in and I ate it. And after about maybe 15 minutes, I started to feel a little strange. And something's wrong. I thought I was getting ill. And she began to look very strange to me. And I said, excuse me. And I went in the kitchen a second and took some milk. Last night I was drinking milk at the time, now I'm vegetarian. And then I said some more banana bread. And I felt really weird. And I called a friend of mine and I said, you made this banana bread for me. Is there some ingredient here? She said, yeah, it's all green. She said, bananas? She said, no. There's almost a lid in there. She told me, oh my God, this is a date. And I'm doing the Smurfs in the morning. So when she started, she would turn around, because it wasn't for like Peter Sellers movie, and she'd turn around and she'd go, isn't he wonderful? What is that? And her face got big, and I said, okay, excuse me. I went in the bedroom, took all my clothes off, and I just wrapped the towel around myself and went to swim. I thought I'd swim it off. And when I'm swimming, I hear in my ear, the light isn't on. And I thought, I can see the fin. I'm out of the water. I'm sitting in the back room, and she comes, are you okay? And I said, I'm so sorry. I think I'm stoned. I was stoned out. Crawled from there to here to the bedroom. Got up the next morning, got dressed, went to work, started out the morning sitting in the chair with the rest of the cast going, la la. Glasses I had. Never took my sunglasses. I never wore sunglasses indoors. And I thought they're going to see my eyes look like slits from a horror movie. And I'm like, la la. And I could hear it in my ears, and it's always stayed with me. The Smurfs obviously has to be the most memorable.
That friend of yours. I don't know that I would use that term friend anymore because they didn't warn you ahead of time.
Cut her out of the way.
But I can imagine like shrooming is already like a interesting experience, but you have the Smurfs on top of that. That's
It was dead. The only comparison, and it was not drugs, was Speed Buggy.
okay.
With Mel Blanc, the Mel Blanc.
Wow.
You all know Mel
Of
Blanc.
course.
Nobody. There were 5 actors doing the characters that he did. I mean, he was a good actor and a singer, and he did this car on an old comedy show, which was the Jack Benny show years ago. And the car would go, Miss Benny. And I said, what a treat. I'm working with Mel. Mel is on my right, and I'm next to him, and there's all the other actors off to the left. And Mel and I started, and I'm the young hero, whatever it were. And we start the show, and I have a line, and he is after me, and I said, oh boy, we're in trouble, Speed Buggy, what are we going to do now? And he's, I got it. But don't you worry, that, and I went, something wet. Mel, when he's working, there's no one else in the room. And I had that all day long. I was almost
almost afraid to say my line. Okay, Speed Buggy, are we ready? You go, yeah, we're ready. All day long. The next week at Hanna-Barbera, we have a guest villain. From there on, we have guest villains coming in. Does everybody know Alan Oppenheimer?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
He was
He-Man.
He-Man,
Yeah.
yeah. He was the character, evil character, He-Man. Alan comes in, he'd never met Mel. And I said, Al, this is Mel. And he goes, oh, Mel, I'm so honored. And I said, nice to meet you. He said, oh, this is such a treat. I said, you know, Al, you're the black hat in this series, so why don't you sit next to Mel? Because most of the stuff is with him. And he went, really? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And he sits next to me. We're in these tall chairs that dip if you move. And he's sitting next to Mel, and he does his evil line. He says, well, don't you come in. I'm not, you're wrong. And I see Mel go, I see Alan go. He does this. And I ain't looking at it. Suddenly my script is it's the Gutenberg Bible. It's so intense, this is an important role. Then this may be Emmy. You know, I'm just looking at this, I'm not looking over there, and I can feel his eyes. Then the next one is coming up. I see in the script, you got another one of those coming up, and just at that time, I see Alan goes like this. The whole chair tips over to the left. Mine tips over to the left. The actress, her chair tips over to the left. The actor, his chair tips, and all this all day long are doing this. At the end of that session, I figured the director needed a drowning. He had to have been seasick because he did this all day long. Every time, no, like, the best, actually one of the best times. One of the best.
I would be remiss if I don't bring up Super Friends. That is another very classic series. And my question to you is, what would you like to turn into if you had a Wonder Twin power?
Oh, wow. Probably Superman. Who would want to be Superman? I mean, my first thought used to be when I was younger that I could be invisible so I could see people naked if I wanted. And then it was when I see through their clothes as I got older.
Right.
And then it became Superman.
Okay. Well, I mean, listen, that's an honest answer right there.
Superman was it. Always. In fact, I got a chance to direct at one point.
Really?
And I played. Who's the bad guy with the bald head?
Lex Luthor.
I played Lex
Yes,
Luthor.
indeed. Yes, indeed.
Had to do that.
That's right. In that 88 series, I think that's one of the cool things about kind of the legacy of voice acting and all the different characters that you've gotten to play. Getting to play, good guys and bad guys, does that inform what you do next time you have a role? Obviously playing, some of the Super Friends, getting to play Lex, who obviously is a bad guy from them. How much of that were you able to kind of go, oh, I know exactly what kind of bad guy you deserve?
You do that, but you try not to make it too facile.
Okay.
When you get a script, you try not to. I learned a long time ago, when I started acting, the bad guy doesn't know he's bad. If you play bad, then unless you're really, that's a whole different game. But if you're playing a character and he's a bad guy, I think I played a bad guy in MASH. I started on MASH and played what they considered a bad guy. And the director said to me, he came down after Alan and everybody was doing this stuff. And he came down and I did the scene. He said, let's do that again and just make it more evil. And I said, what are you talking about? Well, he's bad. I said, no, he's not.
Right.
He's just intuitive and he's just out to make a living for himself. He said, yeah, Mikey uses these kids to steal metal and whatever, and they get their leg pulled off. He said, that's an accident. He's helped someone, goes to the hospital. I said, he's not a bad guy. He's a kid from Jersey. And he's trying to survive. He's a survivor is what he is. He said, oh, aren't you playing bad? And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. And I didn't do that in cartoons unless you really pushed it. Unless it was that kind of character that was so over the top. Really different story.
But you don't play bad, because these people don't think they're bad. They think they're doing the right thing. They're survivors, as it were. So I walked up the set, and Alan came over, and Loretta came over and said, we were wondering how long it was going to take. That we were going to do that. He said, we can't direct us, because we've been doing this for years. You're the only one as the guest that we can direct. I said, you ain't directing me. You ain't doing that. So he finally just took a back seat, just something to do what I was going to do. But that was the element. You don't play that character bad because nobody thinks they're bad. Most evil person you think of, they don't think that's what they're doing to survive. We know they're bad. We know they're scum, but they don't think they're scum.
Makes most of that. We have only like a couple minutes, so we might be able to take like 3 questions from the audience. You stood up first, please. Stand up and be as loud as you can.
Okay. This is a Smurf question. Growing up, my sister was terrified of the purple Smurfs that attacked Smurf Village. And I have to know, am I speaking to the voice of the purple Smurfs?
Who is now what?
The purple
So, there were purple Smurfs that attacked the blue ones.
Yes.
I was wondering if you did their voices.
We probably did.
Oh my
I don't know if we probably did, because when they hired you in those days, it's got a little bit different, not much different, by the way, but they hired you for 3 voices. So if you had a major character, I wound up doing Handy, Lazy, and Grouchy. So if Handy and Lazy were in the same show, or Handy and Grouchy, or Lazy and Grouchy, I could do that. They'd have to pay me extra if I wound up doing Handy. So they never wrote 3 of us doing that. So if I had two characters in, because you couldn't do 3 principal characters, it was just too much money for that. So we had 2 principal characters, and we had subsidiary characters. So I used to do a lot of subsidiary characters, whether it was an elf or a gnome or an evil this or evil that, whatever it was, and we just threw that in. But when Paul Winchell, the wonderful Paul Winchell, rest his soul, who did Gargamel, I think the last season, managed to make a lot of money suing NBC because they burned all his tapes, got rid of all his tapes into the Jerry Mahoney years ago, and he didn't want to do Gargamel anymore. So they offered it to me because I used to be able to play with it, and I would kid around and do it. And I called him and I said, "Is this a negotiated thing? Do you want more money? Because if you want more money, I'm not going to do it. Let somebody else. So I'll never do another actor's voice if it's negotiations." And he said, "Go. I'm not coming back. Do whatever you want." He said, "Perfectly fine, Mike. If you do it, great." So I wound up doing that. And I wound up doing that dastardly at one point because he didn't want to do it anymore. So it was not negotiable. Yeah, but we did that. To answer your question, we all did subsidiary voices. Sometimes we did girls.
See? Yes.
So originally in the G.I. Joe movie, Duke was not going to be A-OK and come out of his coma.
Yeah.
Would you have preferred the original version where Duke makes the ultimate sacrifice and dies, or did you want to live?
Well, sure, I wanted to die. Who wants to work? I read the script, and I said, "Oh, you're not going to kill me. These guys. What is it about me? What fun to kill Mike in all his shows? Between Prowl, between Sven and Voltron, and between this one, you can't keep killing me, guys. Why don't you kill the guy who plays my brother? Nobody cares about him." He's a well-known actor. Who cares? He doesn't do voices. Screw him. Don't kill me. Bring me back. I said, now when you asked about voices, I have to tell you this before we go, which is kind of fun. I did Voltron for years, obviously. And thank you. And then there were 4 of us. And I have a light voice. I don't have Peter rest his wonderful soul wherever the hell he is. But God says, "Come back, Peter." Where his rest. Peter has that great voice. Even B.J. Ward has a better voice than me. So she would do the girls, and I would do the girls, and I would do little children. Could I have this little thing? I would do this, baby. And the Japanese version was always rough. They murdered kids in the Japanese version. They killed them, and monsters would step on them. So they'd say, "Okay, Mike, you got 3 seconds to do all the little girls in this." And it was like, "Oh no, help me, mommy! Oh, help me, mommy!" All that stuff. Years later, I'm sitting watching television with my daughter, who was about maybe 14 or 15 at the time, And I'm just scrolling through and suddenly Voltron comes up. And I go, oh my God, where's Voltron? I haven't seen this in years. And it's the segment, War on Dirty Little Girls. And you're watching it and you hear, oh mommy, and you say, oh mommy, help me, somebody help me, please, oh mommy. And she goes, is that you? I said, just watch, it's an interesting show, there's some good stuff that's coming up. Then another one moving, and the monster comes thumping through the village, and you hear, oh, mommy, oh. And I said, oh, help me, mommy. And she goes, that's you doing with girls, isn't it? You doing with little girls? And I said, and I paid for your college tuition.
Did you do the voices for Thundercats? Any of them?
I don't, I have to look that up.
I was gonna say,
I don't think so. There's a couple got by me during that period. Yeah, no.
Not many, though.
It's a good show. It's a good show
Yes,
too.
indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes.
So when you were approached to reprise your role as Duke on Community,
Yes.
the idea, can you talk a little bit about that? And what was your reaction when you read that parody script?
Absolutely. What happened was my agent called me, and now I'm in my 70s. And they said, they called me from community. Does anybody know what Community is? So they called me and said, they're going to, the lead character is hit in the head, he's going to go into a coma and he's going to G.I. Joe land, so they're going to go animation. So I said, okay, and they said, and they need the voice of Duke. And they said, so, but the director called me and he wanted to know, do you still sound the same? Wow. I said, did you tell him that my ass has dropped but my voice is still the same? And she said, I told him, but it didn't make any difference, he wants to hear you. So she said, okay, if I call. So he gave my phone number, she said, wait for the call. I said, okay. The phone rang, I knew who it was. And I picked up the phone and went, hello? And I said, yeah, I'm trying to reach Michael Bell. I went, yeah, hang on a second, Grandpa? And the phone went, hello? And he said, yeah, I'm looking for Michael Bell, and the voice of Duke. Yeah, that's me. Who's this? And it's a silence. Knowing is half the battle. I ran into him about 5 years later, and he said to me, you know how close I was to hanging out.
Man, that's amazing. Denver, join me one more time in celebrating a wonderful Michael Brown.